something that we get told over and over and over again is that to be a man means being violent and being competitive. This is what feminists think male virtues are, but they are utterly wrong. These seem to be people who don't know men, or at least haven't thought really about why men do what they do. So let's have a quick discussion about masculine virtues. That men are angry, aggressive, violent creatures is right at the base of how feminism sees men. Whenever they say that feminism is good for men too, they talk about destroying this stereotype, as if this stereotype is one that actually exists amongst men, but it's not. Perhaps amongst young men, maybe, sort of. Perhaps amongst boys, like literally boys, but not amongst men. And perhaps it's because early feminist thinkers tended to come from violent or broken homes that they think this is true, but in the modern era, when presumably we've thought about this a little bit harder, it's very difficult to understand why they haven't actually spoken to men about how their lives are. Feminists love to presume that they know the life experiences of all men, while telling all men that they don't know the life experiences of women. And the result is that they're not just wrong, they're crazy. They didn't just miss what it means to be male, they came up with something that's not even a lie. They invented this fantasy of the violent, domineering male, which probably says quite a lot about their sex lives, but we are not here to judge them for that. No, we are here to judge them for their arguments, because their arguments are terrible. You see, the thing is that what they think we think male virtues are, this violent, aggressive stuff, if you wrote a character that was, essentially mindlessly aggressive, was violent, was domineering, who was, was pure fucking alpha, he would be a bad guy. He would have to be. We couldn't sympathise with him. Men couldn't sympathise with this guy who's just, getting his own fucking way and beating down people who get in his way. Goes home and hits his women with a fucking vodka bottle. This is not someone that we want to care about. This is not someone who reflects the reality of who we are. In fact, most bad guys in films and TV and comic books and video games, all kinds of things, are these psychotic, domineering characters who are trying to impose their will on the whole rest of the world. And it's up to, you, the player, if it's a video game, to go stop them. To stop them for the good of the world. Could there be any better way to illuminate what the true masculine virtue is? The true masculine virtue is to selflessly struggle against great odds against someone who is wrong and evil and would hurt those who is weaker than you. These are the virtues of masculinity. Compassion. And yes, strength as well, but strength used to protect others without strength. To be a man means to stand up for what you think is right, even to the point of that costing you your life. And this idea of duty, that you have a duty, an absolute obligation to stand up almost to the death for what you think is right, is not a picture of someone who is aggressive and violent and doesn't think. I'm recording this almost 100 years ago to the day that the Battle of the Somme started in World War One. The first day in the Somme, 60,000 of my countrymen went to their deaths. Most of them knew that they were going to die, and they went anyway. That is masculine virtue, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's always used in a positive way, but men will try to do the right thing, and they will put a cause as being bigger than their individuality. They will subsume themselves to the group to the death, if need be, to stand up for what they think is right. And that doesn't mean that the values of the British Empire in 19 1912, 1914, 1916 were a good thing particularly, but the men of the empire stood up and did their duty because, the Germans were going to try and conquer France and Russia, and, well, look what they did to Belgium. And it is up to us, the men of Britain, to go and defend the women and children of France because no one else will. There's way more that's happening in that scenario. There's way more in the First World War, obviously. But when you think about individual, mustachioed men, mostly working class men, who went and signed up to join the army, why did they do that? Was it just because they wanted a gun? Was it because they wanted explosions and loud noises and, yeah, that's really cool, bro? No. They did it because they thought that that was the right thing to do. They put themselves in harm's way for other people to whom the idea of harming was repugnant to them. That is the male virtue. To say, I would rather you hurt me than hurt someone who cannot stand up for themselves. And you can see this in microcosm as well, just in interpersonal relationships when, some jerk in a bar won't leave a girl alone, and who's it up to go and tap that guy on the shoulder and say, leave her alone, man. That's a man. That's, any man in the vicinity. I've done that. Not because I'm some dick-swinging alpha male, just because leave the lady alone. Be fucking courteous, you asshole. What the feminists don't understand is that masculine virtues are all very much about the golden mean. A violent man is a bad man, but a passive man, a pacifist man, is a bad man as well. A man who would never, fight to defend his home, his family, his children, is not a virtuous man. They talk about men being competitive without thinking that the real virtue is not just being competitive. It's not being competitive all the time. The guy who cannot stop being competitive is an asshole that no one wants to be friends with, especially other men, because Jesus Christ, man, turn it off. Okay? The masculine virtue is being competitive when it's appropriate. When you are on the rugby field, when you are doing a competitive thing, when you are in the office making your business deals, and you need to be competitive. But when you go home, you stop. You aren't competitive with your wife and your children. I remember when I was younger and I used to play rugby, you'd hear teachers or coaches, at the end of the match, the last whistle goes, and it's been a really scrappy game. People been hurt, maybe been tackling a bit too hard. And what's the thing that they say? It's over, let it go. And that's because they are teaching you the masculine virtue, within the boundaries of the pitch, of the game, of the workplace. This strong, healthy competition is a good thing, but when we step off the field, you shake hands, and you buy each other a drink, and you fucking leave it on the field. You don't take it with you. You don't meet a guy in a car park with a fucking tire iron. What are you, French? Even in the most hard-fought situation, even when you're competing over things that mean a lot, that maybe millions of pounds made, that maybe would make your company go broke if you got it wrong, if you weren't so competitive. The thing is that I was always taught that you respect the other guy. You respect that he is just doing the best that he sees to be done. During the competition, he might do things that you don't like, that might hurt you personally. But on a personal level, you shake hands. You respect him because he played as hard as you. He wanted it as much as you, and now we're not on the field. That's it. We're done. We respect each other as men. Men who understand when to be competitive and when not to be. It's funny for me sometimes when I talk to people about how I grew up, because I think we all assume that our childhood is just normal, even when we do get older and we learn that obviously that's not true, but we assume that the broad strokes of it must be true. See, I'm not old really, really at all. I'm 28 now. I was born in the late 80s. I grew up mostly in the 90s, but I lived in Kent in a little pocket of, grammar schooly Middle England, really. Um, and at my school, we still had, housemasters and form tutors. We had the inter-house championship. We had um, an annual contest with our sister school from across in the West Country. We took this kind of image of this 1950s boys' school quite seriously. The school history, the war memorials, which are still up in the main hall, that go back to the First World War. All of the old boys who were here, who wore the same tie as you, who died and were not much older than you when they did. And you learn about this and you just see it around you. And you learn the school song and you take pride from being in your house. But you pull together as a school as well. There is competition between houses, there's competition between year groups, but there's competition between schools as well. And you learn how to temper your youthful exuberance and how to use it in a positive way. I entered manhood, as you might say, by attending an anachronism. This is a place where teachers who didn't know your names would just call you boy, because that's what you were. You were a boy at the school until you were important enough to be noticed. But what all of this horrible, anachronistic, oldie worldy teaching taught me was that there are good masculine virtues and they do need to be tempered, but you should play up and play the game well, and it is the taking part that matters, even if you're crap. We are all going to pitch in when it comes to running cross country, even if you're the fat kid like I was who fucking hated it. They were going to make you do it anyway because it was character building to do things that you didn't want to do and to participate even if you were not going to be good. That was what we were learning, was how to be men, was not just to be pandered to, not just to be celebrated as snowflakes. We were being taught how to show character, how to have gravitas, how to take with a smile the fact that sometimes we wouldn't always get our own way. We were being taught that you stand up to bullies. This was just in the culture around me as I grew up, that you should be the virtuous man, that you had duties and obligations, but you also had strength and self-determination, that you should strive to be good. And in fact, we were taught that we were young men, vigorous young men, and we were taught to harness that to something positive and to never use it for something negative. One of the greatest sins at my school was not trying. It was being cowardly, being selfish. It was saying that, no, I don't want to be on my house rugby team, because we don't have that many good rugby players and we're scrabbling around to try and get a full team together. Oh no, I won't pitch in, I won't try. This was just not part of our culture. If your house, not even your friends, your house said, well, we need a winger and we need someone, so it's going to be you, and you said, all right, I'll give it a go. No one laughed at you for not being good, but people would laugh at you if you didn't try. And to me, there's no more complete deconstruction of the feminist male stereotypes than that. They think that all men must always be competitive all the time, that we value men who are violent. We don't value men who are violent. We value men who will put their lives and their safety on the line to defend other people. We value men who will do things that they don't want to do if that's what needs to be done. We value men who will compete but who will not take that competition too far. We value men who will be good human beings, who will protect their mothers and sisters and daughters, because that's what men do. And maybe in this day and age that is a patronizing thing, because, you know, a woman who needs a man is like a fish with fucking something that it doesn't need. And maybe that is a bit patronizing, but we're still stronger than you, and we will try and help you if we can. And if you don't want that, then you can tell us to fuck off as well, and that's up to you. But don't think that because men have a greater capacity for competition and violence than women, that this makes men by definition competitive and violent. The men who we celebrate in our society today are the ones who did their duty and did what was right. We do not celebrate men who are merely violent. We do not celebrate John Wayne Gacy as being the paragon of masculine virtue. We celebrate men who do not walk by on the other side, men who will take action when they see problems, men who are willing to fight and die for people they have never met. Feminists of the world, you would do well to understand men before you make pronouncements about what it means to be a man. By your logic, my father and my grandfather and their brothers and cousins who died fighting against fascists only did that so they could indulge their urge to violence. You did not know these men. You do not know me. I'm the political animal, and I am on occasion a paragon of masculine virtue.